On this episode, we cover The Candace Owens Show, episode 318. The No Rogan Experience starts now. Welcome back to the show. This is a show where two podcasters with 187 hours of Rogan experience and an hour of Candace Owens experience get to know Joe Rogan and the wider right-wing podcasting world. It's a show for those who are curious about Joe Rogan, his guests, their claims, and the wider media world that they inhabit, as well as anyone who just wants to understand Joe's ever-growing media influence. I'm Michael Marshall. I'm joined by Cecil Cicirello, and today we're going to be covering Candace Owens' March 30th, 2026 episode titled The 33 Club Freemason Murder Plot Exposed. Cecil, how did Candace introduce this episode in the show notes?
In the show notes, it reads, Lindsey Graham lives it up at Disney World. The Utah sheriff, who was in charge of bringing in Tyler Robinson, retires. The 22 people in France are on trial for running a Freemason military hit squad.
Okay, is there anything else we should know about this?
Also, you updated this. You changed this. It reads, by the way, in charge of brining in Tyler Robinson. Thank you very much. You changed the notes. It actually says on YouTube, brining in, because I copy-pasted it.
I did it in case you'd made the error. I couldn't help myself. I see the little red squigglies and I've got to get involved.
They are brining in Tyler Robinson,
brining. Okay.
By the way. Just so you know, it's a cooking thing. So you said, is there anything else we should know about? Yeah. First off, our audience should strap in because this is genuinely something that is very different from Joe Rogan and, in my opinion, very out there in comparison to the stuff that we've heard on Joe Rogan's show. We know about Candace Owens. She was on our show before. She used to work with Charlie, or used to work for Charlie Kirk at Turning Point USA. She also worked at the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro before she was let go for anti-Semitic comments. So she knows Charlie, and she has a lot to say about his death, and she's been theorizing about his death since he died in September of last year, and this entire show is just a continuation of all of that.
Yeah, it really is. So as you say, we covered when Candace Owens was on Joe Rogan's show several years ago. We covered it last year in one of our seasons last year. So this is our attempt now to see this person who's clearly in Rogan's orbit. Where are they now and what are they doing? So what did she talk about in this episode?
She's talking about a French Masonic Lodge murder trial that's happening. Erica Kirk, the murder of Charlie Kirk, the sheriff in that case, how Tyler Robinson didn't confess, and how quickly her store is running through gigantic Candace Owens water bottles. That is another piece of this episode.
That is absolutely another piece. We will get into the merch at some point in here. So before we get to our main event, which is going to be all about Candace's views on Charlie Kirk's murder and the Freemasons, before we get to that, we want to say a big thank you to our Area 51 All Access Pass patrons. Those are Megan Bray, Left Hand Voodoo, Billionaire Oligarchs, Lucy Cortez, Ramtam Tickler, Morgan Gordon, Stargazer 97, Scott Laird, Carissa Gunderson, Darlene, Matthew Cutler, Autistic Twitch Streamer, Stoned Banana, Angie Mackey, Laura Williams, no, not that one, the other one, Cindy Lynch, yes, that's Cindy Lynch, Chunky Cat in Chicago has had enough of this BS, Epstein spells his name wrong and Marsh defends him. It is dangerous to go alone. Here, take Marsh. Fred R. Gruthiers, Dr. Andrew Gibson, the online physics tutor, and don't thank me, your show is just worth investment. They all subscribed at patreon.com/no Rogan. You can do that too. Everybody who does that is going to get access to ad-free episodes. You're going to get early access to those episodes. You're also going to get a special Patreon-only bonus segment every single week. And this week, we're going to hear from some of Candace's biggest fans and top commenters.
Sure are.
So check that out at patreon.com/no Rogan. Before we get into the main event this week, and we talk about the episode itself, we should address the question, really, of why we're covering Candace Owens this week. So from time to time, each season, we like to take a step away from Rogan and look at a show that's adjacent to his. We did that in the past with Lex Fridman, for example. And while Candace Owens might not be as close an associate as Lex Fridman is to Joe Rogan, she is someone that Joe does appear to listen to. And she appears to have at least some influence on Joe. And actually, the reason we thought about Candace Owens is because we heard Joe Rogan recommending Candace Owens to his audience. So here's a couple of clips of how Joe has been talking about Candace over the last year or so.
So this first one's from July 11th of 2024. This is him talking to Sam Talent.
Like one of the more interesting exchanges about the Ukraine war was with, of all people, Candace Owens. Mm-hmm. So Candace Owens was talking about how corrupt Ukraine was. So someone sends her a message from the New York Times. What evidence do you have that Ukraine is corrupt? And she said, your own fucking newspaper. And she sends them all these articles that were written previous to 2017 about rampant corruption in Ukraine, about Ukraine's like one of the most corrupt countries.
Before the narrative changed.
Yeah, before the narrative changed. And now all of a sudden everyone has a Ukraine flag.
Damn.
Look, Ukraine should not have been invaded. Yeah, it's all fucked up.
So clearly here, Joe is listening to Candace Owens. Now, he does caveat that with, of all people, Candace Owens. So he's very, very clearly signaling that, maybe I don't believe everything, or maybe I'm not expecting to get everything from Candace Owens, but it's pretty clear that he's respecting her response here and thinks this is a good piece of analysis from Candace Owens. And he's saying this to an audience of millions of people.
Yeah, I don't believe that this actually happened, by the way. Joe does. Joe thinks that the New York Times would send a message that read that to her. I don't actually believe that the New York Times would ask her, what proof do you have that Ukraine is corrupt, in a message asking about a story. I don't feel like that's something that they would bother to even ask her.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like something Candace Owens, as we'll see from the episode, it sounds like the kind of thing she would say on her show. And maybe that is, completely fabricated, or maybe it is her interpretation of something that was something quite different when the message was sent.
Yeah.
We will come to this. Okay, next clip we've got here. This is skipping forward a few months. This is now to February the 10th, 2025. So just over a year ago. This is when Joe was talking to Bridget Fatassi.
We're coming to dangerous territory where we find out Joe doesn't believe in dinosaurs.
I was watching, we were talking about Candace Owens last night. Candace Owens said dinosaurs are fake and gay.
Is that what she says?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know what she means by that. She might just be having fun. This whole Bridget Macron thing, though, is crazy.
Did you watch any of it?
No. No, I got no time. But I did see a comparison to the photographs of the person that she's claiming is actually, like the brother.
So again, you can see here, Joe starts this off. Oh, she's talking about dinosaurs. It's ridiculous. He's laughing. Obviously, he doesn't believe her. Obviously, she's ridiculous. This Bridget Macron thing, obviously, Candace Owens has published a series of videos claiming that Bridget Macron was born a man and that she's been pretending, has been hiding her identity for all sorts of reasons. Joe, he didn't watch it, but actually, there's some stuff in there he thinks is pretty interesting. So he's kind of playing both sides a bit.
He's just asking questions, just like her. They're just asking questions, those two. This next clip, this one comes from February 11th of 2025. This one is with John Reeves, and they're going to mention another Joe Rogan guest, Ian Carroll.
There's this guy, Ian Carroll. Did you see Ian's video about it? He was saying that somewhere in the neighborhood of like 90% of this stuff that they're paying for doesn't even make it to where it's supposed to be going. And that it could just a lot of it could just be fraud.
Yep.
Did you see that video, Jamie?
He makes a lot of cool videos. I've seen the videos he's gotten things wrong, though.
I know. That's what makes it fun. That's why I like people like him. Him and Candace Owens. They're my favorite go-tos when I want to know who the fucking lizard people are.
He sounds like he's playing a little there, right? Ah, ha, ha, ha.
Yep.
Candace Owens, she believes in lizard people, and so does Ian Carroll. But I will point out that in the last episode we just aired with Dan Farah, there's a moment where they're talking about lizard people too. So I don't think it's too far out of the realm to believe that Joe doesn't believe in lizard people.
Yeah, and also like, he's comparing Candace Owens to Ian Carroll and saying, maybe for some stuff that's crazy, but, some stuff that might get wrong, but other stuff is really interesting. We know that, in when was this, March 2025, so around about the time that this was like a month after this clip, he had Ian Carroll on the show.
He did.
So he is saying that Ian Carroll and Candace Owens occupy a similar space in his kind of go-tos.
Yeah.
And yet, he's not ridiculing Ian Carroll. He had Ian on a month later and was totally on board with him. So he's kind of signaling through that association where he places Candace Owens. And it's not right out there on a kooky shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
This a month later, March 22nd, 2025, this is in his Fight Companion show.
The JFK stuff kind of just confirmed what kind of they label conspiracy theorists. Like, yeah, we've said it was CIA, Mossad.
It's going to take a while for the nerds to really go through it and figure
Candace
it out.
Owens been through it. I bet.
Has she been through it?
I would assume.
Well, she's too busy with the Macron thing. I watched 2 hours of that today.
Me too. Have you seen her?
Macron's a man.
It's a fact.
Yeah, Bridget Macron's a man.
She got you.
Yeah, she got me. Candace got me. She got me hook, line, sinker.
Dude,
I was eating breakfast today.
Yeah, I do the same shit.
I was eating elk steaks,
Same
watching Candace Owens on my YouTube.
I love her. Did you
I was
see?
like, this is crazy. This is crazy.
Have you dived into her Harvey Weinstein shit?
Yes, I watched the first episode of that.
Bro.
Crazy. It's crazy. So I can't believe I'm on Harvey Weinstein's side.
Right?
Crazy. Like, I thought he was like guilty of like heinous crimes, and then you listen to it and you're like, wait, what? What is going on?
When they go through the actual affidavit, like what the girls accuse him for, you're like, what?
Yeah. Also, the emails back and forth with the girl. Yeah, she was talking about his testicles. He doesn't have them. Like, there's all these like things that should have like completely thrown out a lot of her claims.
So again, this is a month after he first brought up the Bridget Macron things, and I've obviously not watched that. It's crazy, but he's watched 2 hours of it, and he's fully in. He very clearly is fully in, not just on Bridget Macron was a man and that whole conspiracy theory that Candace is doubling down on, but now also Joe is pro Harvey Weinstein as a result of Candace's commentary and coverage here. So it's not just one topic. There's multiple topics he's getting pulled into, and he's giving the impression here to the audience she's a legitimate source. She's got some good points. She might be out there a little bit, but she's got some good points.
Yeah. That the Harvey Weinstein thing actually doesn't surprise me with some of the way that Joe talks and who Joe platforms and how Joe thinks about women. It doesn't surprise me as much. But the Macron thing is something that he's sort of he danced around a lot in a lot of his other shows. He sort of danced around it, but here he straight up says it out loud, which, again, is what she's being sued for. So I don't know if he's going to add himself to that particular court case with that kind of comment. I don't know. I mean, the Weinstein thing I think is interesting because obviously around the same time he's talked a lot about the Epstein files and all the abuse in there. Now, obviously, what we've covered in the past is his version of the Epstein files. Isn't that the women and girls were the victims there? Right,
they were just the conduits by which blackmail happened. So maybe that's why he is more open to the idea that Harvey Weinstein was set up, or his belief in Harvey Weinstein being set up plays into how he feels about Epstein. Like, we don't know which direction of transit there is on his acceptance of those particular, or his positions on those issues.
So in April 3rd of 2025, he had Dave Smith. Now, we just covered Dave Smith and his discussion with Joe about the war in Iran. And now Dave Smith, this is from before, Dave Smith was on his show, and they had a conversation that mentioned Candace Owens.
Exactly. You could go, I'm going to talk about no other topic. Give me the 8 p.m. hour on MSNBC or CNN or Fox News or whatever, and I'll say, I'm just going to make my show about Jeffrey Epstein. That's every single day, that's all we're doing. I guarantee you I have the #1 show in cable news.
Right.
More people would want to watch
the
that.
Candace Owens show that's on YouTube.
Yeah, that's right. And it's doing better numbers than any of the shows on cable news.
It's phenomenal. It's like they created a monster with her when they fired her from the Daily Wire. They created a monster.
Yeah, they sure did.
She can't be stopped.
Yeah. Oh no. There's no stopping Candace Owens at this
she's
point.
hitting all the fucking third rails that no one wants to touch. She's got a 6-hour presentation on how Bridget Macron is a man. I mean, it's fucking 6 hours plus long.
I don't know if she's even kind of right about that.
I think she's right.
But she's got a lot of shit to say on it,
bro. She would be getting sued right now instead of they're trying to bribe her. Instead of trying to give her money to shut the fuck up, they would sue her.
Yeah, no, you're probably right about that.
I don't know if they are suing her. Have they tried to file anything? They probably have. They probably filed some bullshit lawsuits.
I'm sure she's dealing with several.
I'm pretty sure she's right. I don't know. I might be wrong.
Yeah,
I think she's right. The whole thing stinks.
So even here, when they bring Candace Owens up, he's joking, he's laughing, he's saying that she's kind of like they've created a monster. She just spends hours going on about Epstein. I don't think he's laughing in the sense of she's ridiculous. I think he's laughing in the sense of she is so out there and on it, that she's so focused and so like a dog with a bone, essentially. And that's what he's sort of saying here, that she's hitting all the third rails. Yeah. But now he's talking about how he totally believes her 6-hour presentation about Bridget Macron being a man. If it wasn't true, why aren't they suing her? What do you mean they're suing her? Well, they're coming after her. That must be because it's still true.
They must be bullshit lawsuits. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Also, I'll point out, he says it's fucking 6 hours plus long. That's 2 Joe Rogan episodes. He can't criticize people for watching 6 hours of Candace Owens on that.
One of his Ian Hafer episodes is 4.5 hours long. Get the fuck out of here.
Okay, so we're going to move on now. May 29th, 2025. This is with Ishan Ahmad.
Imagine that was in the United States. Imagine if it turned out that there's a female that's running for president, and then we start going into the history and find out that she met her husband, who's 80, when she was 15.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, fucking yo. But in 1974, it was legal. Like, fuck you. Fuck you, man. That's crazy. We would never. But because it's a guy and an older lady, air quotes, lady, we let it slide. Like, he still gets to go to the meetings and shake everybody's hand. Yeah. He still gets to go to these fucking things where all the world leaders get together. He's hanging out with them like normal.
Wait, what's also funny to me is you're probably going to get in more heat for calling her a man than she will for slapping the prime minister.
No, she's catching heat. Yeah. I think, and also Candace, if she's right, and it seems like they're not suing her, so I think she might be right. And they did offer her money. How much money did they offer her? Find out that. How much money did they offer Candace Owens to not tell these stories?
Damn. They offered her, they were like, here.
I believe she's made some sort of an accusation that they offered her a sizable amount of money to not do this.
Jesus.
Yeah. Which is the last person you want to tell anybody that you offered them money to not talk about something, because she ain't taking that money.
Right, yeah.
She sees the long game.
She's already willing to.
Stories that comes from a meme and then it's not true.
Oh, damn it! France offered to pay Candace Owens a one-time payment of $4 million plus $50K per month for the rest of her life. That's just a meme.
Yeah. What's the site?
Come from her.
Neither Owens nor French President Emmanuel Macron have referenced the claim on their respective websites or verified social media accounts, and there is no other evidence to support the claim.
So again, here we are. This is a year ago now, or just under a year ago now, in fact. And this, to me, is pretty clear that he thinks she's right about this, that she's a credible source, that she's done the work, that if this wasn't true, they wouldn't be trying to pay her off, even though he's not checked and they aren't trying to pay her off.
Yeah.
We're now presented with the idea that Candace Owens is a legitimate source.
Yeah. And Joe's social media diet, of course, feeds into this again. And Joe gets his information from a meme and thinks it's real. Yep.
Exactly.
That's a thing. That's a recurring theme that we've covered many times on this show. This last clip that we want to play, this one came from another show that we did. This is actually a show we did recently, Andrew Doyle. And I'm not sure we played this part of the clip because this was, we sort of talked about it in the background, but we never actually played the clip because it got cut and put in the probably not play section when we decided to what we were actually going to play for the audience. But this is actually Andrew Doyle pushing back on some of the things that Joe is saying. But they are, again, going to talk about Candace Owens.
Yeah. And I think the reason why it's in France probably has a lot to do with Candace Owens.
Yes, that makes complete sense.
Yeah,
that
Brigitte Macron and I mean, how many times did that get shared?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that
makes sense of it now.
By the way, there's a real quick way to solve that. Open chromosome test.
Yeah.
Go ahead and
I thought you were going to be a bit more graphic than that.
Well, you don't have to.
No, you don't have to.
Because that doesn't really solve it, because you could, there's no operation, but if she's gone through a surgery, then, you could show a picture and it's probably pretty realistic, especially when was the last time you saw a 70-year-old lady's cooter?
Last week.
Oh,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I'm just interested in that sort of stuff.
Well, you're allowed to be curious in this country.
That's actually a really good example, though, isn't it, of the just something so obviously not true, just going all over the world, like in a matter of moments.
Is it not true, though?
Well, that Macron's wife is a man. Yeah, that's not true.
100%?
Well, the burden of proof is on those who want to say that it is true.
Points for Doyle there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the many things that Andrew Doyle believes that I would say fly in the face of reality. He has a line, and this is not over his line. So, kudos to him for that. But I think if you listen to those clips there, what impression would the Joe Rogan listener, one of his 20 million subscribers on YouTube and however many subscribers on Spotify, what impression is this building up of Candace Owens? So I'd argue the impression that you'd get over this kind of repeated exposure to Candace Owens as a source is that, yeah, she's someone who's she's a little out there sometimes with her ideas and not everything she says is true, but she might have a point and she might really be onto something because she's willing to go where few other people do. She's willing to talk about stuff that people are scared to talk about. And when she does that, she'll hit on stuff and be right about stuff that's pretty far out there. She'll be bang on right. Joe is very clearly offering her a kind of endorsement here.
Yeah.
Even with a slight caveat of endorsement, to a casual listener, this is going to give her additional credibility. And Joe has, as I say, more than 20 million subscribers on YouTube. So this is why, for our main event, we're going to listen to Candace Owens and listen to what she has to say to see exactly what is it she's talking about and how reasonable is it.
And I think this particular episode that we're going to listen to is all about conspiracy theories about Charlie Kirk and his murder. And this is something that I think is she's been talking about for a long time on her show. I think some of this stuff, just like the Bridget Macron conspiracy stuff, will probably work its way in to Joe's media diet and then into Joe's show eventually. There may be some pushback when someone talks about Charlie Kirk in the future. There may be a moment where Joe says, well, are we sure that that's exactly what happened? Are we sure that that's how it went down? Are we sure that it wasn't Mossad? Are we sure that it wasn't the Jews who did this? And we'll get an opportunity to sort of peek behind the curtain and maybe what might be influencing Joe.
Okay, so it's time now for our main event.
Check it out. It's time.
A huge thank you to this week's veteran voice of the podcast. That was Rob Page announcing our main event. Remember that you can also be on the show. Just send us a recording of you giving us your best rendition of It's Time. You can send that to NoRoganPod@gmail.com. And remember to tell us how you want to be credited on the show.
Okay, so we're going to play a lot of this tape because it's an hour-long show, and most of the time our show is over that. We're going to be playing a lot of this tape that as we work our way through. The main event is mostly talking about the murder of Charlie Kirk and then the various conspiracies that she brings up around it, specifically about the Freemasons and then about France and about Israel. And I mean, there's so many pieces, I can't even name them all in this beginning piece. There are just so many different pins in this board with pictures on them and string. You will just try to have to follow along at home. So this is the intro of the show. This is right before she does her intro music. She sort of tells people what's on deck. And this is what's on deck for this particular program.
All right, you guys, happy Monday to everyone except for the occult Freemasons who sacrifice people, who murder people. I do have to say today is a great day to be Candace Owens. It's a great day also to be a Candace Owens podcast listener because back in November, I was telling you guys that France was in fact involved in Charlie Kirk's assassination, specifically that their intelligence agency, also known as DGSE, was involved. I also told you that in the military, they wear maroon, like it's the military parachutists. They wear maroon, and that the whole 33 thing was not subtle. It was Freemasonry. Well, lo and behold, ladies and gentlemen, 22 people in France are on trial for running a Freemason military hit squad. And the story is related to Israel. I promise you that is what is trending today in the news. You see, it's all crazy until you understand how the world actually works. You do not live in a meritocracy, okay? You do not live in a meritocracy. These people murder and they steal and they kill. And I got to tell you, regarding Freemasonry, all roads lead to France and Israel. Welcome back to Candace.
So yeah, this is literally the opening of the show, and look how far out it is immediately, like right out of the gate. You know, good morning to everyone except the occultists who sacrificed people and who murdered Charlie Kirk. That's not a normal good morning. That's not a normal welcome to anything.
Yeah, and this is her doing a victory lap, saying, "Look how right I was." But we'll find out as we work our way through. Her being right is her pinning something to a board and then using an extensive amount of twine to tie it to something else to say these are connected, even though they are not even close to connected. So we'll find out about the Freemasons as we work our way through this. This is a complete nothing story that has nothing to do with anything, but she will tie it in as best she can. There's a quick line there to the people who are listening that might be involved in sort of that intellectual dark web stuff. This is not a meritocracy that you live in. She says it right out loud, very specifically, I think, for that group of people who are tuning in, who might be also in this ecosystem. That's a sort of a bit of bait for them to latch onto this as well. Politics is not a meritocracy anyway. We know that. It's a popularity contest, so that's just a genuinely dumb thing to say, but that's what she says. And there's also a point here where she starts to talk about how all these nations come together. She's talking about France and Israel and the United States, obviously, who all come together to assassinate some guy who intellectually bullies college kids. I mean, we couldn't even all each country decide how to handle a pandemic together. How could we all decide that this person is so dangerous to free speech that they need to be eliminated? That doesn't make any sense at all. But this is the conspiracy that she's trying to brew here. I also want to point out, too, by the way, I know she says it's Maroon 33, but Maroon 33 is a totally different band. That's the one from the 70s. It's like they got a tambourine player and a cowbell player. There's like a bunch of people in it. It's a really big, it's like a whole ensemble. It's enormous. Yeah. Totally different band. All right. Now we skip ahead a tiny bit because she spends a minute talking about certain other things. And some of that stuff's going to wind up in the toolbox when we get to it. But right now she brings back in the Freemasons.
And look, I get it. A global Freemasonic cult of military assassins. On the surface, maybe it sounds a little out there, a little unhinged, but that's only if you are not paying attention to real world history. Unless you have to wake up, okay? America was, in fact, founded by warring factions of Freemasons. Freemasons pursued America in the hopes of establishing a new Atlantis, which was going to be removed from their battles with the Catholic Empire, who were kind of burning these Freemasonic psychos at the stake, as they should have done.
It does sound a little unhinged, Candace. You are correct. By the way, if you're following along at home, we are rooting for the people who were burning other people at the stake. Those are the good guys. So this is the story that she's laying out for everyone.
And it's told with such confidence as well. Like, that's the thing, is all of the times that she's delivering everything through this episode, she'll deliver with the confidence of somebody that makes you think, if you're just listening casually, oh, she's done the work to understand all of this. People wouldn't be talking with such authority and so calmly and collectively with such kind of certainty if they've not done the work behind it. And I think this is a big part of her appeal. And partly, I think, part of the reason why Joe Rogan, having watched 2 hours at that one point of the Bridget Macron documentary, or having watched her talk about Harvey Weinstein, comes away thinking, well, she must be right about it. Yeah. It's not on the strength of the evidence she presents, and we'll see that in this show. It's on the strength of the conviction she has as she presents it.
This next clip is not skipping any tape, but they start bringing up the significance of the number 33.
Now, even if you didn't know all of that, you probably at least understood or thought that it was strange. Your senses maybe started tingling immediately following Charlie's assassination, when virtually nothing they were telling us made any sense. And all of the leaders who were communicating to us just felt the need to keep saying 33. Take a listen.
And that was about, I think it was like 33 minutes before he was killed.
Charlie Kirk was assassinated at UVU in the afternoon. About a 33-hour manhunt ensued.
Bad stuff happens. And for 33 hours, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us.
In 33 hours, we have made historic progress for Charlie.
Yeah, we get it. 33. Look, it is, in my educated opinion, the most obvious signaling ever, alerting those that are in the cult that this was a hit that was done by the cult and for the cult. Now, never mind that out of all of the Freemason lodges in the world, every Freemason lodge has a number associated with it. The one that is in St. George, Utah, which is where Tyler Robinson was brought in, is lodge number 33. Okay, 33 also being the country code for Paris. Now,
she's trying to tie in the number 33 as often as she can. But one thing that she keeps on saying, and she keeps on playing the same clip, is they're all mentioning the time it took to capture Tyler Robinson, but they all have the same time. So they're all just referencing the same thing over and over and over again. It just happens to be different people who are reading the same statistics.
Yeah, that's true. Apart from the first speaker in that clip.
The first one is different. Because it's 33 minutes before.
Yeah, exactly. She says all of the leaders kept saying 33. And of the clips she plays, all of them, apart from the first, are, as you say, talking about the length of the manhunt. It's people at the FBI, it's law enforcement, it's people like Kash Patel talking about the 33-hour manhunt. But that first part of the clip, in the clip of all the leaders who kept saying 33, is where he says it was 33 minutes before Charlie was killed. Well, who is the leader she's talking about there? I had to pause the video and use like a reverse image lookup to identify him because I didn't know. And it's Andrew Colvert, who was Charlie Kirk's producer for his podcast. So she's termed that clip of Andrew Colvert into that montage in order to give the impression that all the leaders kept saying 33. But one of those people is his podcast producer. He's not a leader. She's just looping him in for the purposes of the argument. Now think about all of the people who are leaders, who we know have talked about Charlie Kirk, that she didn't include. People like Trump or Vance or Elon Musk. She didn't include them because they didn't say 33 a bunch of times, and it didn't fit, so she left it out.
As the producer of this show, am I the leader, Marsh? Do I get to
I think you are the leader, Cecil. You're absolutely the leader. If you get involved in any cult murders, you've got to tell me beforehand. That's like in the articles of Constitution.
We got to make sure we both agree on which occult murders we want to be involved in, too. I think that's a company vote on that one. Look, she's making it seem like 33 is significant. So that would mean that they would have had to wait the requisite amount of time in order to catch the person. So they're looking at their watch and they're saying, look, you got to bring him in. He's got to turn himself in between, let's say, 9:23 and 10:23, or else it's not going to work. So he's got to come in this hour span. Like, that seems ridiculous. Also, why not just wait 10 minutes to shoot him then, if that's the case? Because he was shot at 12:23. So you could have waited if they're in it. Why not wait the 10 minutes? Or, why not have the gun that they find? Why not be a Heckler and Koch HK-33? Perhaps they could have done that instead.
Yeah, and the thing is, as she'll talk about, the reason it's 33 is because she thinks it's linked to the Freemasons and the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, which is the top degree. So I guess if he had come in before 923, they might accidentally give the credit to the second in command of the Freemasons, like one rung down. And that'd be a whole thing, people really stealing credit for stuff they didn't. Credit flows up. That's how all corporation structures work.
Yeah, and cults, absolutely. The thing is that the reason why she says this, and she gives a reason as to why the 33s get mentioned here. She says they have to signal to the rest of the cult that they were the ones who did it. But if you were in the cult, wouldn't you just know that they did it? I mean, wouldn't you be part of that? Wouldn't you at least get the email newsletter a week later to let them know, hey, here's what we've been up to as an organization. Here's the things we've been doing. Yeah. And last piece of pedantry, just really quickly. Paris isn't a country. So 33 is not the country code for Paris. 33 is the country code for France. Just want to throw that out there.
It is. And that last one in particular is how we know that what she's doing is searching for connections anywhere that she can find them. It's why she involved Andrew Colvert's video in whilst calling it all the leaders, because it said 33 and she needs to get as many 33s in as possible. Like, if we examine her argument here, is her argument that the Freemasons were responsible for handing out the international dialing codes and they chose 33 for France because the top-ranking Freemason is the 33rd degree? But why would they choose France for that? Because, not the UK, where the Scottish Rites of Freemasonry actually started.
That's true.
She tells us in the main that starts kind of in the Scottish Rites of Freemasonry. does it mean that only the only people who are in the 33rd degree of Freemasonry can be in France? It's obviously nonsense. It's a sign that she's just clutching at straws because she can't let an obvious coincidence pass by. If this was a strong argument, she'd see that the dialing code for France is 33, and she'd say, well, that's obviously just a coincidence because that can't be connected in any kind of way. It would make no sense for it to be connected. But because this isn't a real proper argument, this is just dot connecting, she has to throw every single one in she can.
Yeah.
And honestly, that might be a sign. It could be taken by some as a sign that she's not well, that she's seeing she's seeing significance in coincidences. She's obsessing about details. She's joining things together that shouldn't be joined together, that have no connection because she's struggling or she needs help or something like that. And that might be the case. It might not be the case. I don't know. It's not. We can't diagnose her from a distance. But that is a pushback that I imagine people might have when we look at analyzing a show like this. But what I would say is that's why we pointed out at the start how often Joe has recommended her to his fans so many times. This episode of Candace Owens that we're covering right now has been viewed 1.6 million times. So we can give her the attention of analysis because she's already given herself a huge platform. There's 1.6 million people already listening to her. I think it would do a disservice not to take a look at what she's saying at that point and what are these people buying into. Because when you see the comments on this episode, they're not saying, wow, this is crazy, she needs help. They're saying, this is exactly right. You're completely on the money here. So that's why it's worth us looking at this.
1.6 on YouTube alone. This is a podcast.
On YouTube alone.
So it's important to point that out too, because this is the only metric we get an opportunity to see are the views on YouTube. While those views might not include the entire show, they certainly include a large portion of people who are at least tuning in for a small portion of it. And then you also have to add into that all the other places that her show gets produced and sent out to, all these other satellite places. And she might also have, people might also just be downloading it on their podcast player from Apple Podcasts or something. And that's a metric we can't see.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to apply our ratio of YouTube viewers to downloads, then she's billions of people are listening.
She's in the hundreds of millions. All right. So anyway, the next bit of this is, again, we're not skipping any tape. This is just the continuation of that conversation about Freemasonry.
Americans are not used to the discussion about Freemasonry, so this all felt very new. And I feel like people weren't really ready to have this conversation because we go to public school, we're told, like Paul Revere, they don't tell you that he was like a Rosicrucian Freemason, but he was like, the British are coming. He factually never actually said that either. But that's the reality. The founding fathers were all Freemasons working on international orders. I'm sorry if that doesn't sound like rah, 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 USA. But we have to wake up to this because you have to understand how this country came together and how things have been functioning since. You have to understand internationally what has been going on. And when we are speaking about 33rd degree Freemasons, we are not talking about your grandfather's Freemason group. Well, they got together, they did nice things, they did things for charity. No, we are talking about the highest rank of Freemasons, and 33rd degree in particular is the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Okay. And this part is really important. I actually only recently learned this thanks to my book club. If you were in my book club, you would know this. But the Scottish Rite Freemasonry actually originated in France. Okay. It was after Jacques de Molay, we would say Jack de Molay, was hung or burned at the stake because the French king was looking at what the Knights Templar were doing, and the Pope had dissolved the Freemason group because they were accused of worshiping Baal worship, doing all sorts of weird sexual rites. All the stuff that we are establishing today is actually happening with the elites. Jeffrey Epstein type stuff was going on. This has been going on for a very, very long time. And so they left France and they went into Scotland and they fought for Robert the Bruce, and eventually this ends up in America. That's the short and thick version. You should join the book club. It's fascinating.
So, yeah, it's fascinating. But this is all completely untrue. None of this is true. Again, she's delivering it with that kind of confident tone.
Yeah.
She seems very certain about what she's saying. So you think, well, she's done the reading here. Although she gives away she hasn't quite done the reading because she's talking about Jacques de Molay was hung or burned at the stake. I mean, he was only one of those two things. He was burned at the stake. You could just check that if it's central to the point you're making here. So I checked out. Her book club has been reading The Secret Founding of America, The Real Story of Freemasons, Puritans, and the Battle for the New World by Nicholas Hager. That's the book that she's referencing here. And all she's doing is regurgitating what she read in this book. This is the education that she's had. This is the research that she's doing. Now, I'd argue if you've read a single book and now you're just regurgitating it on your 1.6 million YouTube subscribers, that isn't research. That isn't research at all. And no matter how confidently you're saying it, you don't know anything about this other than what you read in one book. And that is the issue here. She reads a thing somewhere, and then that's immediately true to her, and it's part of the worldview that she then starts broadcasting out to so many people.
It sounds like how Joe Rogan gets his information as well. Might be an important connection to there. I do want to, in her defense, your country does do some weird shit to corpses too, okay? So on occasion, you'll clip things off and place them somewhere, and you'll be like, hey, this piece goes here, and we're going to send this other piece to this other city.
Got to quarter a guy sometimes. Yeah. How do you tell people what's what if you don't quarter a guy sometimes?
So maybe they did do both of those things, Marsh.
Yeah.
We don't know. They could have been like, hey, we'll hang him, and
very
now we'll
different
just tie
in the
him up.
UK.
Yeah.
Quartering troops is very, very different in the UK. It's banned in both our countries, but very differently for different reasons.
Very different. It's a very different process. This is sort of her version of Gish Gallop, right? She's doing a big info dump where she just mentions one thing after another, and there's no time to really contend with what she has to say because she's sort of rapid firing, working her way through. She's like, the founding fathers were working on international orders, and then they created this country, and this isn't about the charity groups your parents belong to, and this is the highest level of Freemasons. This is the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. So I'm going to use some really specific language talking about the Freemasons, so you know I know what I'm talking about. And they were worshiping balls, which is a totally different part of the internet, by the way. And then they left France and they had, she throws Robert the Bruce in there. So there's all this very specific stuff that she pops in there to sort of show her depth of knowledge on the subject, but also gives you an opportunity to not really pick up on any of the things that she's saying and how they're not really connected or how they're not really true.
Yeah, she's throwing out detail, and you assume that means she's done the reading, but she hasn't. Because none of this is true at all. The Scottish thing isn't particularly true. So Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake, as I said, in 1314. But we only have record of the Freemasons existing. At the time, the group was called the Scots Master or the Scotch Master occasionally. They only existed from 1733. And that they became the Scottish Rites Order of Freemasonry from there. So there's a 400 and something year gap in between the death of Jacques de Molay and the Scottish Rites. Now, Jacques de Molay was the 23rd and last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and he died 400 years before Freemasonry actually started to emerge in Europe. But the reason anyone starts to link him into the whole Freemason story is largely because some Masonic lodges like to pretend that there was a historical element to what they were doing. So they started up and said, oh yeah, we've been going for 400 years. We've been going for longer. There were some Freemason groups who even said that they claimed that Freemasons built King Solomon's temple between the 10th and 6th century of BCE. But all of that was just an attempt to give their new little social clubs some kind of mystique. And then pseudo-historians fully accepted that at face value. It's the same kind of logic that the Nazi party, when Hitler joined, his membership number was in the hundreds or the thousands, but he was actually only in the tens of members at the time because they started numbering higher up. They started the number of higher up things, so it looked like you had more members than that.
Nice.
This is a quote from the modern historian Malcolm Barber in a book called The New Knighthood. Quote, it was during the 1760s that German Masons introduced a specific Templar connection, claiming that the order, through its occupation of the Temple of Solomon, had been the repository of secret wisdom and magical powers, which Jacques de Molay had handed down to his successor before his execution, and of which the 18th century Freemasons were the direct heirs. They just made that up to sound cool. And now Candace Owens is repeating what they made up as if it was true.
Amazing. Next clip. This is where it starts to tie itself into the rest of Charlie Kirk's murder, because now we're working our way to figure out why the story she mentioned at the beginning of the show has some sort of significance. And the story that she mentioned at the beginning of the show is that there is a group of Freemasons that were caught in some sort of murder cabal in France. And this is her talking about the French AP, and she's going to quote some of that story on her show.
So this article today was definitely something. The French AP broke it. They broke the story regarding a trial that is taking place where the quote unquote Freemason Lodge Mafia is facing charges for attempted murder. Oh, the Freemason Mafia. I feel like that's global. Let's read from this article, which came out in The Guardian, because it's just peachy. Okay. It reads, quote, 22 people have gone on trial in France on charges of murder and other serious crimes centered on a Masonic lodge accused of running hit squads. 13 defendants, including former intelligence agents, soldiers, and businessmen, face possible life sentences. Prosecutors allege that the group carried out murder, attempted murder, aggravated assault, and criminal conspiracy on behalf of a mafia network inside the Athenor Lodge in the Paris suburb of Puteaux. At least 4 Freemasons from the lodge's roughly 20 members are among those in the dock. Other defendants include 4 officers from France's DGSE Foreign Intelligence Service, 3 police officers, 6 executives, a security guard, a doctor, an engineer. Most of the accused, whose ages range from 30 to 73, have no previous criminal record. You mean to tell me upstanding businessmen in society could be accused of murder and coordinating murders? What? Oh, I'm so offended. No, there's no way. What do you mean millionaires don't do these sorts of millionaires don't do these sorts of things? Yeah, they do. That's sometimes how they become billionaires and stay billionaires, because they murder people. And wake up to that. Oh, wait, what? They're saying the French Foreign Legion and the military was involved in murder for hire? You don't say. You know what I'm wondering? I'm wondering if there were any Maroon boys involved in this one. Extra points if there's also an Israeli angle.
So this is a real story. 22 people have indeed gone on trial. That bit's true. I bet you was absolutely devastated there weren't 11 more defendants. If this was 33 people on trial, we'd be hearing about that.
You guys missed it. That's on them.
And she said earlier in one of the previous clips, she said here as well, there's an Israeli angle. She's right that the story is related to Israel in that some of the victims were assumed to have been allied to Israel. Were just assumed to have been. It's not that they were, but that's some of the reasons they were killed is because they were suspected or assumed to have been to do with Israel. This is a quote from The Guardian. The case was triggered by a failed contract killing in July 2020 when 2 members of France's parachute regiment were arrested in possession of weapons near the home of business coach Marie-Hélène Dini. They told investigators that they believed they had been asked to murder Dini on behalf of the French state, targeting Dini on the grounds that she worked for the Israeli spy agency, the Mossad.
Wow.
So that's what they believed was happening. That's the Israeli connection that she's spinning out here.
Yeah. It feels different than the connection that I think she's trying to imply there, by the way. Yeah. And one of the things that always weirds me out whenever I hear these stories about how this supposed Illuminati is working, and then they somehow get busted by the government they control. It always seems so weird. I don't understand why the government would bother to do that if they are controlled by this Illuminati and they do the bidding of the Illuminati. Why even bust something like this? It doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't get it.
Yeah, that is a detail that Candace Owens will not interrogate, despite how much detail she's going to go into elsewhere. And look, being as charitable as possible, you could say that this case is an instance where a Masonic lodge was used to network together people who were willing to kill for money. And therefore, another Masonic lodge could be doing the same thing.
Really got to reach.
The umbrella above all the Masonic lodges could be in charge of doing the same thing. But the thing is, if we're to follow that association and assume that Candace is right here, she could just be as suspicious of churches, mosques, NRA meetings, and any other gathering that has been used at least once as a meeting place for criminals.
Yeah.
So it doesn't put the blame onto the Masonic Lodge here, let alone connect that to the killing of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah. Republican National Convention could be another one where the criminals meet. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. All right. Next up, this is again, we're not skipping any tape. She's still talking about the same story, and she's going to talk about the maroon piece, that maroon angle that she brought up in the last.
The Maroon Boys, she called them.
Maroon Boys.
Okay, let's keep reading. It goes on. The case was triggered by a failed contract killing in July of 2020 when 2 members of France's parachute regiment were arrested in possession of weapons near the home of business coach Marie-Helene Denis. Oh, let's pause. Parachute regiment. We should pull up a photo of these guys because I swear oh yeah, it's the Maroon Beret Boys. And when they're in plain clothes, they wear maroon shirts. Yes. When they're trying to look like human beings, and you can look this up everywhere, they wear maroon shirts. You could hire these people for assassinations? What? That's so crazy. That's so crazy, because I swear there was a person who told you that, and then the media freaked out, but they hushed it up, right? I sent something to the FBI. I sent it to the White House. I told you this was real and that they were on the ground that day.
Really feels like a terrible way to remain secret and kill people, because if I cross the people that are Freemasons, all I have to do is just avoid people who wear maroon, and I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's like how in the Power Rangers, they only ever dressed in their own color, even when they were off duty, just hanging out, having a milkshake, and she being pink and he being red.
He has to have green, fully green. Yeah, it's the whole. It's a whole thing. It's like we have to follow these rules. The one thing I would caution anybody who crosses the Freemasons, though, is don't go to a Washington Commanders game, and if you do, keep your head on a swivel, because everybody there is wearing maroon, unless they're for the
probably
other
good
team.
advice generally.
Yeah,
Freemasons are not probably just good advice there. Look, I mean, taking all the jokes out of this for a moment, like some sources on Freemason law, they do say that Freemasons do wear maroon, but other sources say they wear scarlet, or even just they wear red. But even if we grant her now that maroon is a color worn by Freemasons, that isn't actually why the French troops wear that color. So this is from a source I found on military history. The French regular army paratroopers beret is a brighter red than the British maroon beret, but some French parachute regiments wear maroon berets like the British, pulled over to the left side in French style. That tradition recalls the free French origins of those units that were formed and trained in Britain as part of the patriotic rebel General Charles de Gaulle's army in exile. So the fact that they're wearing maroon beret isn't because they're linked to 33rd degree Freemasons who like to wear maroon even on their off days. It's because they're linked to the Free French Brigade during the Second World War, when they were an army in exile, and they took their inspiration from the British who trained them.
And also, on a serious note too, there's a moment here at the end where she talks about how she's sending these things to the White House and the FBI. That points to something you said earlier, which is, we don't know that she's well. You don't know that. I mean, somebody who's reaching out and sending things like this to the White House, I mean, that's showing that there's a level at which she might believe this sort of thing. And like you said earlier, the reason why you have to cover this is because somebody like this has such a wide audience. There's a lot of people who are being influenced by this right now.
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely. And when she says she sends stuff to the White House, I don't imagine it's like the emails we get to Joe Rogan that are CDC'd into giftshop@whitehouse.gov.
Yeah.
I imagine she knows someone at the White House, given the circles that she's moved in for so long.
Yeah. And we are skipping ahead a few minutes in this next bit of tape. This is where she talks about how she was also named as someone who maybe this group of people might want to go after to assassinate.
And yeah, I'm proud of myself because I understand that one element of their games is exactly that, psychological warfare. The goal was to break me down psychologically, tell me as soon as Charlie gets killed that I better lay low, as Andrew Colvett did, because my name is on some list and I'm going to be next. That's meant to psychologically traumatize you, to make you afraid to go outside. I get it. Having everyone attack me immediately while I'm grieving. Let me tell you something. I am psychologically tougher than all of you. I've proven that. So I'm just going to throw it back here to when I told people that the DGSE in Paris was involved and had also put a hit on me. Here that is, which came in November, my old tweet saying that I had a source inside of the French government, because I did, that told me that their NG intervention group was involved in the assassination. I said that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Legion 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. Ha 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 ha, they said. That's so crazy. And yet nobody official denied it. Isn't that weird? Nobody official came out and denied it.
What does this have to do with any of the things that she brought up earlier? I mean, even if it's true that there was sort of this French government that was involved in some sort of Freemason assassination punch card system that she said she was saying earlier, what does that have to do with Charlie Kirk or her suggestion that Charlie Kirk was killed by the French? None of this stuff connects at all.
No, it doesn't. The only connection is France.
Yeah.
Stuff, she found a story to do with France and killing people and the Freemasons and gone, well, that tells you everything you need to know. But it doesn't. And honestly, I do think this would have been traumatizing for her. I can fully believe that. We've seen from a backstory that her response to trauma and pressure and bad things happening to her when she was like heavily cyberbullied in her origin story. She covered that with Joe Rogan. Her response to that is to go off in incredibly odd directions. Back in that particular case, she started an anti-cyberbullying website. She was then essentially a troll from the left for a while, sort of shitposting about figures on the right. And then she transitioned into working for Turning Point as their head of urban development right at the time that Turning Point were looking to get rid of any accusations that they were racist. Like, she's very clearly capable of taking a bad thing that happens to her and spinning it off into an unpredictable direction. And I think this is a sign that that's what she's doing here too. When she says things like, I had a source inside of the French government, we're actually going to see throughout this interview that so much of her insights, so much of her knowledge, so much of what she claims to be true is based on sources here and tip-offs there. And I think it essentially is the same thing as with that Freemasons book. Like, she gets a piece of information sent to her and she accepts it if it agrees with her and then becomes part of the story, and then she'll talk about it authoritatively, when actually the source of that could be incredibly flimsy. I don't believe that she had a credible source inside of the French government telling her all this stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't. And she said, and yet they didn't deny it. Well, I don't think it's that weird that nobody official involved in the French government denied her accusation here. Who was going to deny it? The French Legion, the GGSE, the French government? Why would any of them care what a podcaster in the US is saying on her Conspiracy Time radio hour?
Right.
I just don't think she's going to. But then she'll pivot to her defamation case with Bridget Macron. And I think that's her real reasoning for why France here.
Yeah.
That's why she's looking for French stories. She's trying to tie it all together because she went after Bridget Macron with this big conspiracy narrative libel, and she's feeling the heat of that. And now that's part of the oppression story against her.
So this is still her discussing the assassins and who you would use if you were going to have somebody assassinated.
The United States government is not dumb enough when they want to pull off an assassination. You go overseas. You have assassin squads and they rotate and they do things overseas. So maybe France uses American forces. Maybe American forces use French forces, Australia, who knows? We saw a lot that day. Australia, Russia, so many countries that were involved. The goal is to make you think that this is all implausible, that Freemasonry is not real, that it's a figment of the past, that people at the top don't kill. They're the number one killers, actually. Always have been. And they're lying about everything pertaining to Charlie Kirk's assassination.
So this sounds interesting, but what is she actually saying here? Well, the proof that the French Freemasons had Charlie Kirk killed, the proof there is that the killer isn't French. That's evidence because the French wouldn't use a French person to do it. So if somebody of a nationality kills someone, you know it definitely wasn't their government who sanctioned it. It could be anyone else, but other than that, this reasoning allows you to blame pretty much anyone you like at this point. Meanwhile, in reality, the US government seems pretty happy to use their own people to carry out their extrajudicial killings. Just look at the boats that were being shot in Venezuela.
Right.
But that doesn't count.
Yeah.
That doesn't count, apparently.
Yeah.
This is where she's not sense testing her own hypothesis here. She's just picking holes in someone else's.
In this clip, she's going to be referencing a previous piece of tape where they're talking about a discussion that Erica Kirk, who was Charlie Kirk's widow, had with Barry Weiss from CBS. So they're having a conversation. Barry Weiss had an opportunity to interview Erica Kirk. And in that interview, Erica Kirk looks at the camera when Barry Weiss asks her a question on whether or not she believes Tyler Robinson was the actual killer of her husband. And she says, yes, I do. I know that he had killed my husband. I think that this is something that we need to like focus on getting him prosecuted, essentially, is what she says.
She's objectively lying and she's acting. She was told to say that to make people believe that she had access to something that we didn't, right? It was because of that clip that when I went in to meet with her, I was going, oh, okay, maybe she has something that the public doesn't. I spoke to her, I'm in touch with the lawyers. I've seen the autopsy report. And then I sit down with her 72 hours later and she tells me, and her lawyer confirms to me, that they have nothing more than what the public has seen. In fact, her lawyer went through great lengths to explain to me that it was actually, that's just not the way it works. Of course, they don't have anything more. He explained to me very carefully that it wasn't the right time for them to have any more evidence, that the investigation was just beginning. And so right now, their guys are going out and they're going to look for evidence. And then by May, which is fortunately around the corner, then she'll see what they found. So what the F is that performance? How could you sit up there and say, yes, I 100% believe Tyler Robinson did it? That right there is why it is impossible for me to think that Erica Kirk is not complicit somehow. Because what wife with no more evidence, she's lying, like I said, she told me, I spoke to the lawyer too. He said he didn't know anything more. What wife would not say, I have no idea. I'm looking forward to seeing the evidence as much as anybody else is. Of course, maybe there could be more people out there. What's that? That is her being coached and sent to delude the public into believing that there was more and it wasn't so clear cut when she knew that it wasn't. Evil. That's evil.
Candace is really, this is really out there, in my opinion. There's a lot of conversations that you're not involved in. So you can't just presume to know what Erica Kirk knows. And she keeps on saying, well, they didn't say anything other than lawyers. But there's also a real important thing to do if someone's prosecuting a case, and it's that you don't want to go against and try to make that a broader thing if you want to try to prosecute the person. So there's no reason to bring in anything else or talk about anything else if you think that person is the one who's responsible.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I don't have any love for Erica Kirk at all, but I think it's incredibly distasteful how Candace Owens is attacking her here. Only one of those two women lost their husband that day, and in an incredibly graphic and traumatizing way.
That's true.
And yet Candace Owens is out here saying she's evil for what she's kind of said. And all she said is that she accepts that the guy who's suspected of being the killer is likely to be the killer. I don't think it's remotely unreasonable for Erica Kirk to believe that the person arrested for killing her husband might have killed him. There may be evidence comes out later that disproves that, but in the moment when she's having that conversation initially, I don't think it's unreasonable for her to have that, to come to that provisional conclusion. Here's some of the evidence that Candace Owens isn't talking about. So the day after the shooting, Tyler Roberts' parents convinced him to come to their residence in Washington, Utah, and because they recognized his likeness from a news image that the authorities said were of the shooter. So his parents said, we think that's him. They called him up, they discussed it, and in the conversation, when he came over and talked to them, he implied that he was the shooter. So that is already evidence that is committed. It's in the court documents and things like that. From there, his parents contacted a family friend who was a retired detective. That retired detective called the sheriff and made arrangements for him to surrender. And an hour after the shooting, Robinson was on Discord in a private group chat where he's asked people if they saw the news, and other people said, yeah, I saw the news. And the person who's the killer looked like Robinson. And he joked and said that he must have a doppelganger who's out there trying to frame him. But then later the same day, he went back into Discord and wrote, hey guys, I've bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this. I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you for everything. That's a message he put in Discord. And then on September 15th, the FBI announced that Robinson's DNA matched the DNA found on a towel that was wrapped around the suspected rifle and on a screwdriver that was found on the roof from where the shot was fired. All of that is pretty strong evidence. It's not conclusive, it's not 100%, but it's pretty good indicative evidence that he might be the right guy to be blaming this. Candace Owens overlooks all of that and overlooks it to a point where she says that Erica Kirk saying she believes in it is an evil liar who set out to deceive people.
In this next clip, she's going to talk a little bit about the confession that Marsh mentions here.
So that's interesting. I do want to jog your memory, though, because I was sitting here going, one of the biggest lies that makes me so angry that people keep repeating, and there is no truth to this. There's no truth to this, is that Tyler Robinson's dad handed him in, that Tyler Robinson confessed to the crime. And there's not a shred of proof to this. First and foremost, it does not pass the common sense test. Okay. Common sense. If I say that I am guilty of something and I turn myself in and I say I did it, the first thing they make you do at any police station is sign a statement. That is your confession. I did this. I am guilty. Signed Tyler Robinson. And then you hand that in and there we go. We got it. Has anybody watched like the first 48? Anybody used to watch like TLC shows? Get educated. Okay, this is how it goes down at police stations. You're guilty, you sign a statement, and the same would be true, by the way, if his father had handed him in. Okay, that would be a witness statement. You would say, I saw so-and-so, whatever, and this is my statement. None of this has been presented as evidence. And said, I was going, where did this idea come from that he had signaled that he was guilty? And I thought, was it Sheriff Brooksby?
Now, she's confusing things pretty badly here. You can turn yourself in from being involved in a manhunt and not admit guilt. That's possible. Yeah. That's something that can happen. You don't necessarily have to confess when you turn yourself in.
No, exactly. And in fact, your lawyer will often suggest to you that you don't do that, even if you were guilty, because it leaves you the ability later to say, to plead guilty without necessarily incriminating yourself further. What Candace Owens is doing here is she's literally citing TV shows as her understanding of how the criminal and legal system works in order to explain how the prosecution's story of what happened here doesn't make sense. So she's using her ignorance to poke holes in the story of the people who do this for a living. That is a sign that she's not really on the right track here.
Yeah, and even the newspapers are sort of very carefully dancing around the idea of confession, because there's something very different from a signed confession you do and this other confession stuff that happens behind the scenes, which is technically a witness saying that someone confessed. And even the first story, I dug up the first story in the New York Times that was written about this. I went back to look at how they wrote about it, and they were very careful about not saying that he surrendered with a confession. They were very careful about not saying that because it wasn't a signed confession, which is normally what would happen if you were to confess to a crime.
Yeah, exactly. But she says where they get this idea that he admitted guilt in any kind of way, that he signaled he was guilty. Well, if you read the court documents, even the court filings, you'll see where they get that idea. So this is directly from the court documents. On September 11th, 2025, the day after the shooting, Robinson's mother expressed concern to her husband that the suspected shooter looked like Robinson. Robinson's father agreed. He also believed that the rifle that the police suspected the shooter used matched a rifle he'd given to his son as a gift, or a rifle that had been given to his son as a gift, rather. As a result, Robinson's father contacted his son and asked him to send a photo of the rifle, and Robinson didn't respond. However, Robinson's father spoke on the phone with Robinson. Robinson implied at that point he planned to take his own life. Robinson's parents were able to convince him to meet them at their home. As they discussed the situation, Robinson implied that he was the shooter and stated he couldn't go to jail and just wanted to end it. When asked why he did it, Robinson explained there's too much evil and that Charlie Kirk spreads too much hate. They talked about Robinson turning himself in and convinced him to speak with a family friend who was a retired deputy sheriff. At Robinson's father's request, the family friend met with Robinson and his parents and convinced Robinson to turn himself in. The family friend also asked Robinson if he had any clothes that were related to what he did, and Robinson replied he disposed of the clothes in different areas. These are where they get the idea that he indicated he was guilty from. It's in the court filings. Candace Owens hasn't bothered, either hasn't bothered to read or hasn't bothered to remember that she's read the court filings about which she's spent so many hours now of podcasting. Her friend's murder, she spent so many hours talking about it, and she hasn't clearly bothered to properly read the court filings, I'd argue.
And this next one is about talking about Tyler Robinson as well. This is about how he turned himself in and why he decided to turn himself in.
Because I told you that I had a source that was very close to Tyler Robinson's family. And the story goes that Tyler Robinson repeatedly said that he was not guilty, that he was surprised when he was confronted by the family friend, who we know is Mike Mitchell, who used to work for the sheriff's department, but Tyler Robinson knows him because he was his Boy Scouts coach or whatever. I don't know how Boy Scouts work, his Boy Scouts leader or whatever. And so he was the one that said to him, they have your prints on a gun and like, it's going to be easier this way. And he went to his house and said, two options here. They're going to burst through the door. You're going to get the SWAT team. You're going to have guns to the faces of you, your mother, your father, or you're going to go and peacefully see what they have. And he's like, I didn't do it. Those are your options, bud. And that is the reason that Tyler Robinson went to the police station. And miraculously, we have no footage of that day. And I think the reason why they're saying there's no footage is because there's this narrative that he turned himself in and that his father thought he was guilty. It's a lie. It is a lie. Shame on people that are repeating this lie and trying to establish a patsy in this case. I am at the point that with all of the proof that I have, the people that I have spoken to that were intimately involved in this case, I would willfully sit on the defense side and say, this person told me that the feds planted the gun. This person told me that the bomb dogs couldn't find it. How can you sit back and pretend that you are like a friend of Charlie Kirk because you're trying to get a patsy put into prison? Like, you guys are completely monstrous and pretending that you're on the side of morality.
So she says here, she's got a source that's told her all this stuff. And it's another one of her tip-offs, just like the source she says she has inside the French government, or the tip-off she says in a different clip that we're not going to play, I think, that she received about Brigitte Macron being an agent of Mossad. I think that's in there. So she keeps talking about the sources, the tip-offs that she get. And it's because she's not telling us who they are, we can't guarantee that it's not just anything. It's just somebody telling us something, just like the book about the Freemasons proved to her that America was founded in that kind of way. Now she just accepts it. Now she's going to repeat it.
Could be a comment on one of her videos, Marsh. We have no idea. We don't know who her source is.
And she ends by saying that she would go into the courtroom and say, I've been told this by this person, told this by this person. I could actually believe that she has been told those various different things by somebody or a bunch of someones at some point, you know, about the bomb dogs not finding something and someone planting the gun. Like, I believe she's been told that. But she's got 5 million YouTube subscribers and she did a multi-part series accusing Brigitte Macron of having grown up as a man. We've seen only a snapshot of the kind of emails that Joe Rogan receives from the size of his audience. I can only imagine what Candace Owens receives directly to her inbox. So yeah, I imagine she does get some stuff from people saying they know some things. The job of a good researcher or a responsible broadcaster is to be able to tell which of those things are credible or not. And I don't trust that she's capable of doing that at all.
All right, we're going to move on to our toolbox section.
But it's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox, and we need a lot of tools.
Okay, so for our toolbox this time, we're doing anomaly hunting.
Yeah, so anomaly hunting is where you go over everything with a fine-tooth comb in order to spot anything you can portray as an inconsistency in the story or an oddity in the story. However minor it might be, however explainable it is by other means, however unsubstantiated it might be. But once you've got that inconsistency, you can dismiss the entire narrative or the entire argument as well. It can't be true because I found this one thing over here. And you can normally spot when someone's doing this, when they're keen to examine the official story, like the official version of the story with a forensic level of scrutiny. And then they will propose their alternative version of the story, which they've given almost no examination of and has gaping holes in it that have never been scrutinized. And tied to anomaly hunting is sometimes the demand for more and more information. Tell us this, release this, give me that. Usually that's portrayed as an insistence on transparency, like what have you got to hide unless you give us this information? Why are you holding it back? But whenever that detail is met, all it really does is give people more scope to mine for anomalies. You've got more stuff now to look through and find more inconsistencies or more details that you can pick at. So that's kind of what Candace Owens spends a lot of this conversation or this monologue doing.
Like, see the Epstein files for a great example of that, which we covered on the show. This is essentially the same thing. All right, so we're going to start out relatively early. This is some of the tape we skipped over earlier. This is her talking about puzzles.
I'm really just on it, guys. I don't know what to say. I'm just so good at puzzles. I'm so good at puzzles.
So It's only a short one. I initially wanted to use it out of context in the gloves off to say like she was bragging about how quickly she can do a jigsaw, find the corners, find the edges really hard. But then it felt hard to put it in the gloves off because what this is, and this is like in the first minute of the first couple of minutes of the show, this is her telling us that she's just spotting coincidences and looking for patterns and anomalies, and then she's claiming their connections. She sees this as a puzzle to piece together, when actually I'd argue she's finding pieces that do not fit this puzzle and just forcing them to fit. And she's bending the jigsaw in order to make the pictures fit.
Yeah. With enough twine, any piece fits.
Yeah, exactly. 3 points will always make a triangle.
Yeah. She now shifts to talk about Sheriff Nate Brooksby. And this is a lot of the conversation in this episode revolves around this person because they stepped down and there was some scandal, and she talks about it for quite some time. And this is her bringing it up.
So this is interesting. Sheriff Nate Brooksby has resigned suddenly. He had like a COVID resignation, died suddenly, resigned suddenly. Okay. And that's the Washington County Sheriff. Just to jog your memory here, Nate Brooksby was the guy that initially came out. It was to the Washington County Sheriff's Department that allegedly Tyler had turned himself in, right? He resigned, and now there's an interim sheriff in place. And there's, like I said, they're in the middle of an election. So now they're down to a single candidate. The resignation occurred on Friday, and there has not been a public statement given for this out of nowhere resignation. But over the weekend, his name was quietly removed from the sheriff's office website and social media pages. And there was a lot of speculation. And I saw that some people said that there was going to be more information that was coming out. Now, my instinct is that there's going to be some corruption. He's gotten involved in something and he has to quietly resign. Like if they're in the middle of an election, they're usually digging up dirt on you. They may have found something. I am wondering if this might have something to do with Tyler Robinson and the Charlie Kirk case. I don't know for certain, but I'm interested. In a statement that was released by the Washington County Commission, the officials confirmed that he had tendered his resignation on Friday and that he announced his retirement, noting that he had served in law enforcement for more than 30 years.
Conspiracy theorists love this sort of thing because this is a moment something pops out, they can speculate on it very quickly. And this is something she loves to see. And this is something that she immediately speculates on. She did it before there was actually information out. And now, because we cover the shows, a day or two after they come out, we start listening to them. We found that this, in fact, had to do with sexual harassment from a totally different case and also interfering in a totally different case. So that's why they resigned. And that all came out afterwards. But this is what they call forgetting the miss. So when you count the hits, you count the hits. Obviously, this is something that I hit on. But when I do speculate on something and I forget the miss, and I miss, then I forget it. I conveniently move past that and don't ever bring it up again.
Yeah, exactly. It was about sexual harassment. Or is that just what they want you to believe? Is that just their cover story? The 33, they've got money. I'm sure if Candace looked at the story, if she hadn't rushed this video out and had actually waited until she saw this news article about it, I'm sure she could look into it and find a reason to believe that it wasn't actually about sexual harassment. That was just them framing it, and it was still just about Charlie Kirk. She could find an anomaly in here somewhere to keep the story rolling.
Yeah, because if your misses, you can still nudge it. You can still nudge it where you want to miss it, where you want it to hit. Next up, this is talking about Erica Kirk again and Tyler Robinson, and this is when she's bringing up the Barry Weiss conversation.
Tyler Robinson did not do this alone. I feel the opposite of how Erica Kirk felt sitting next to Barry Weiss. With everything I have collected, I feel the exact opposite as Charlie Kirk's wife. I feel almost certain that Tyler Robinson did not shoot. I would say I feel 99.9% certain that Tyler Robinson did not shoot Charlie Kirk from a rooftop by himself. How about that? I'm going to say 0.1% because I don't know. You just should never say 100% unless you're, Erica Kirk's lawyers. 100%, we'll get him. We're just going to go on vibes. No, you're going on corruption, not vibes. What she feels 100% confident about, is that there is a bunch of people who will lie for her. She's got a police force behind her. She's got 33 behind her. She's got the White House, Scott Bessent, that'll publish letters saying that they're so upstanding and so moral, right? That's what she feels 100% certain of, is that she's connected to the billionaire class of Epstein-type people who lie about everything. Me, I follow the facts, and Tyler Robinson did not do this. He's not a lone gunman on a rooftop, okay?
Yeah, never go 100% unless you're going to accuse Erica Kirk of being 100% corrupt. That's the only time you ever really go 100%. It feels weird to rope Erica Kirk in here because she keeps on adding people to this conspiracy, and that's not great for conspiracies to keep adding people. So now we've got some random Masonic lodge in France. You've got the Masonic lodges that were involved here in the United States. You have the United States government, the French government, the Israeli government, and Erica Kirk, and the entire Talking Point USA cast. It feels like a lot of people.
And the sheriff who brought Tyler Robinson in, I guess he's got to be in it in some sort of way. And there's someone else we'll come into in a minute too. And the thing is, while she will put that picture together because she's scrutinizing at a forensic level of detail in her mind every bit of the official story, she'll never scrutinize what her version of the story actually is. Because in a way, it doesn't matter what her version of the story is as long as she's clear what the story isn't. That's why she's looking for anomalies, but not accepting what evidence is there. It's about being able to doubt the official narrative more than it is trying to prove a counter-narrative. And when she's not working at all to prove a counter-narrative, it's proof that she isn't really trying to persuade you of a specific story. So actually, for this clip, we've cut out a long clip where she plays a bit about Sheriff Brooksby. He's the guy who confirmed that the parents, he brought in Tyler Robinson. But in this clip, Sheriff Brooksby confirmed the parents called a guy called Mike Mitchell. That's who the parents talked to, saying that they thought that Tyler Robinson was Charlie Kirk's shooter. And it was Mike Mitchell who got them to bring Tyler in. So when she's talking about Sheriff Brooksby, the middleman here is Mike Mitchell that the parents knew and called. And he's the one who managed to talk Tyler Robinson in. And that's what this clip is going to be about, this Mike Mitchell guy, this retired sheriff.
Oh, okay. So that's the version of what I heard. And that makes the single most crucial person, and by the way, flies in the face of the fact he later on says he went in because he didn't want to get shot and have the SWAT team at his house. So if he had suicide ideation, why would Mike Mitchell tell you that? The single most important person, this is Mike Mitchell. Who is Mike Mitchell? Who is Mike Mitchell? The best I could tell, it seems like he was working undercover, like child porn type crimes on the internet, which is kind of a theme in this story. Who is Mike Mitchell? Who is the Boy Scout leader, Mike Mitchell? I have questions about him because I think, and I'm putting this out here, I'm speculating here, I don't have proof of this. I think he was working with the feds on trying to get Tyler and putting this on Tyler. I believe that Mike Mitchell was the one who went there. He knew who Tyler was. He went there and coaxed him into going. His father, by the way, never, ever, ever said his son did this. I have had communications with people. I've told you this from the beginning. My sources are solid. He does not believe that the person looks like his son that is coming up the staircase.
So now she's trying to dig into who Mike Mitchell is because he's a person Robinson's dad knew and contacted about bringing Tyler Robinson in. So now Mitchell is involved in the story. He can now be mined for anomalies. What kind of police work did he do in the past? What else he done in his life? How did they know him? What does he say? Why did he say about the suicidal ideation when the SWAT team thing was around there as well? Like, what has he said, and how can we mine that for inconsistencies? Every piece of the puzzle is another opportunity to start asking questions and poking for holes. But Mike Mitchell was a friend of the family from church. And as we've seen according to court documents, the parents suspected the shooter was Tyler. His dad recognized the rifle, so they called a friend from church who they knew was retired police. It doesn't matter what kind of police he'd been, what he'd ever examined, whatever investigated in the future. He was a retired police guy from their church. And to that person, Tyler confirmed he disposed of the clothes he was wearing when he did the shooting. Candace Owens' questions never rest on any of those details, either because she's not read the court documents, which means she's not informed about the murder of her friend, or she's read them but can't spin any anomalies out of them. You know, she's saying about the SWAT team thing. Like, why was he saying that he was worried about getting shot by the SWAT team when he was apparently had suicidal ideation? This is an inconsistency. Except someone can be suicidal at one point while also later not wanting to be killed by the SWAT team. Right. Even if they were still suicidal, maybe they didn't want to face a SWAT team and be shot by them. Yep. Like, these aren't inconsistencies. This is human behavior stuff. But she's overlooking all of that because it's an anomaly that she can track down here.
This next clip continues on talking about Brooksby and Mitchell.
And when I went back and looked at what Nate Brooksby said, he was honest in his delivery about how things came together, that Tyler was under pressure. He also, when he gets later on in the story about how he turned himself over, never says that he signed a statement, never says that he said he was guilty, never said that his dad said he was guilty. He said that Mike Mitchell told him his dad recognized him. But we got to talk to Mike Mitchell. Mike Mitchell is now speaking on behalf of Matt Robinson. Did Mike Mitchell sign a statement at the police station? Mike Mitchell is a suspicious individual. We need more information about Mike Mitchell. He was trying to cover him immediately. He didn't want to say his name. No, say his name. He should be sitting trial. We should be able to see him. People should be able to ask him questions. The defense and the offense, right? I mean, let's roll the clip of him saying like when he came into the police station or whatever we have left of Nate Brooksby.
Within the hour, my friend drove Tyler and his parents to my office, where he was greeted by plainclothes detectives. So that was part of the deal. Is Tyler knew it was just inevitable with all the law enforcement pressure that his picture in the news, the gun on the news. He knew it was inevitable that he would be caught. He was fearful of a SWAT team hit on his house, or he was fearful of being shot by law enforcement. So part of the negotiation and getting him to bring himself in was that we would treat it as delicate and as soft as possible to make him feel comfortable to where he would show up at my office. And that's exactly what happened.
There you go. Doesn't sound like a person that's guilty. You don't have to make a deal with someone that's guilty and over-mounting pressure to get him to come in. And so I just wanted to point that out, that we need to go back to the beginning and realize who were the actors that put on the performance, that handed out these talking points.
This is all confusing the issue again. She keeps doing this with this signed confession. There's not a signed confession, but she keeps on making it seem like they're lying and saying there's a signed confession. That's not true. We already talked about that, so we don't have to go over it again. But again, she keeps on muddying the water, keeps on going back to the same thing over and over and over again, because again, it's that little anomaly that she wants to point out, because there's different stories from different people or different ways in which they tell this story. And so it might not match up perfectly because there's a whole bunch of people working on this case.
Yeah, and every single person that's working just leaves another gap that can look like anomalies that can be mined for conspiracism. So Mike Mitchell is now suspicious. She's even saying that Mike Mitchell should be sitting trial for having persuaded Robinson to come in. Like, in what world do you then have to sit trial for having helped bring in a killer? It's obviously ludicrous here.
Yeah, and there you could feasibly have some sort of suicidal ideation, but then not want your family to be killed during a SWAT team extraction, or have their house be like the front door blown off its hinges and a bunch of stuff get broken and things like that. So you might have different thoughts about, or like you suggest, you might not want to be killed by the SWAT. You might have suicidal ideation and not want to be killed by a SWAT. There's a bunch of reasons why you might not want to do this. She thinks she understands exactly. There's no reason you would ever do this. And so now I know I got you. I got you on this one.
Yeah, exactly. That's not how people behave, she says, having absolutely no knowledge at all of how people in those situations behave. When you read the court documents, it's very clear that there was a worry that Robinson might kill himself. That's in the court filing. He said he was just going to he worried he might just end it rather than do anything further. So what's her accounting for that? That he was so worried that he'd be framed that he became suicidal over the possibility of being framed?
Guess so.
Like, what is, I'd suggest that's actually what the deal and the negotiating from his parents and from Mitchell was. Don't kill yourself. Please just come in and turn yourself in. We'll handle you as gently as possible. We'll be sure that you'll be given a fair hearing. You won't be roughed up by anybody. Just please come in and we'll make it all, and you'll have it as fairly as possible. I think that is probably what the negotiation that they're talking about here. And she's just overlooking all of that. This idea that you don't make a deal with somebody that's guilty. I think you do make deals with people that are guilty all the time.
Yeah. Next clip. This is them talking about some of the messages that Tyler supposedly authored.
And then they say, the messages. Has Tyler said that those were his messages? Has Tyler confirmed that that he authored those messages? Has Tyler been arraigned yet? Has Tyler entered in a plea? So who are all these frauds out here telling you he's guilty, that the evidence is overwhelming? I'll tell you who they are. They're people that have betrayed Charlie. They betrayed his legacy. They betrayed what he believed in. And they're doing it for money. Let's just be frank. They're all doing it for money.
So just listen to this here. So she has all these questions about the messages. Now, by the messages, I guess she either means the messages he left on the bullets or the messages on Discord or the messages with his partner. It's unclear which messages she's talking about here. She's just saying the messages, but she's got all these questions about them. Has he admitted they were his? Have we confirmed authorship? Has he entered a plea? What is all she's got a lot of questions about that. But then she transitions to all the people who betrayed Charlie as if related to all of this, and how they did it for money as if related to all of this, about which she has zero questions.
Yeah.
So she's anomaly hunting about the details of the real case, putting forward her own version of it with zero questions about that at all. This is why this is her engaging in logical fallacies and conspiracism.
Next, and this is the last clip in our Toolbox section, this is them talking about telephones.
They're attacking the people who are investigating this. They could very easily clear up, clarify things, and make people understand they had nothing to do with anything. They could just give up all their phones that day. Let us see them. We didn't do that. Somebody thought that I had something to do with the murder of my best friend or my husband or someone that I worked with. I'd be like, here's my phone, take it. Somebody just published everything that I did. Somebody suspected me. You guys want my phone on the day Charlie Kirk was assassinated? Take it. Why would I be spending millions on PR? Why would I be hiring a crisis PR firm? Where were you sitting at my table working on my show? Savannah came downstairs and said Charlie had been shot. What did you go for? I went into the office, my husband's office, and I prayed, and then I cried for the rest of the day. I called Tucker Carlson, called Andrew Colvett, texted with both of them, figure out what was going on, found out he was dead, cried for the rest of the day, got into bed. Like, what's so hard about that? Why is this so hard for you? Why are you paying money to go after Joe Kent and Candace Owens? And what are you guys doing? I know you're being guilty. You're being extraordinarily guilty of something.
So now that we've seen just how much Candace Owens goes on these anomaly hunts, can you imagine what she would do if she did have access to everyone's phone who was involved that day?
Gosh.
Do you think that would answer questions, or would it just find more gaps for her to pin sort of questions around?
Yeah.
She says if somebody thought that she was involved, she'd give them their phone. Okay, Candace, on this podcast, right now, I'm going to say that, I think maybe you might have had something to do with it based on absolutely nothing at all, just pure conjecture. I'm saying right now, maybe you had something to do with it. So I assume you're now going to send me your phone for me to go through fully and go look through everything that's on your entire phone because I've said that? Obviously not. Obviously, that would be ridiculous, a ridiculous standard to set. Yet she's making it seem like that would be a reasonable thing to do. It obviously wouldn't be.
Let's wrap it up with that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you very much. You're a beautiful person.
All right, Marsh, anything good in this Candace Owens show?
It's very hard. It's very hard to find something good. The best that I could say is I do honestly think and genuinely believe that she cared about her friend Charlie Kirk. I think that's genuine. I don't think it's performative. There's times that she's performing something, but I don't think she's performing when she's saying how much she cared for him. Now, Charlie Kirk was not a good guy. He certainly wasn't a truth seeker or the kind of peacemaker that he's been posthumously painted as by so many people on the right. But he was a person. He had friends, he had loved ones, and I think it's clear from this show how hard one of his friends is taking his death. And I think that's genuine, and I think I couldn't criticize how genuinely hurt and how genuinely upset and traumatized she is by the death of her friend. So, I think that's genuine from her, and that's as close I can get to something good, is that she's showing her genuine affection.
Yeah, I can't think of much else other than that. I mean, there's really this whole show is just a conspiracy bubble that she keeps adding things into. And it actually gets a little frightening when you listen to it and you think about how many people are being influenced by this. It genuinely gets frightening. So nothing really positive in this at all.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's it for the show this week. Next week, we'll be back on Rogan. So maybe that will give us something more positive to look through. But remember, between now and then, you can access more than a half an hour of bonus content from every single week from as little as $1 an episode. You can do that by subscribing at patreon.com/No Rogan. That's KNOW Rogan. Meanwhile, you can hear more from Cecil at Cognitive Dissonance and Citation Needed. And you can hear more from me at Skeptics with a K and the Skeptic podcast. We'll be back next week for a little more of the No Rogan experience.
If you love the show, please rate and share it. If you want to get in touch with us,
become a patron, or check out the show notes, go to knowrogan.com. KNOWROGAN.com.